Welcome to Omni Edition Garden City. I am Dan York. With me today in studio is Faith Briggs. She is the recreation coordinator for the city of Garden City. In just a little while, we'll have Carley Turner here. As Dr. Carley Turner. She is with the Western Wayne Family Health Center. We're going to talk about the Go for Zero program that the city of Garden City is participating in. First of all, welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Go for Zero. The conversation is about underage drinking and junior high kids, high school kids, trying to minimize that effect. Explain to me the Go for Zero program and how Garden City is participating.
Yeah, so Go for Zero is a community effort to prevent underage drinking for our youth. And so the way we're doing that is we educate youth on the risks of underage drinking by doing interviews like this, and usually in normal times we do community forums and those things to educate the community on those risks. We know that when teens are drinking, they're affecting the development of their brain. They're also going to affect their academics, their mental health, their relationships, and so this project is all to, decrease and prevent that underage drinking. We work with many partners, including Garden City Police Department, as well as Garden City Community Coalition, to make these efforts possible, and all of it's done through grants. So we received a federal grant from SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The grant we received is called STOP. It's Sober Truth on Preventing Underage Drinking Act. It's from that act where the funding comes from, and that is helping us fund these programs and doing this education in our community.
So the key thing about this program is the education, is trying to get the word out and trying to get people to understand the risks involved with underage drinking and the problems it could have going forward.
Right, exactly. Not everyone knows what those risks really are. There's a lot of science behind the development of teenage brains and why it's not safe for teens to drink and why we have that age of 21 for legally drinking. And so we're doing that work to to educate underage drinkers and their families and the community at large. And we do that by working with community partners like Western Wayne Family Health Centers.
So even though it's a risk all of the time, it's more of a risk as we get into the summer months because kids are out of school, kids have more free time, they're outside more and away from their parents and maybe outside of their parents' view, so this becomes more of a problem this time of year.
Yeah, definitely it can.
Absolutely. All right, well, we want to bring into the conversation again Dr. Carley Turner. Again, she's with the Western Wayne Family Health Center. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, of course.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I specialize in working with children and adolescents, and I've been working with them for almost about 10 years.
All right, and how did you get involved in this program?
So I joined Faith for one of our previous online webinars, kind of talking about risks for teens drinking and how parents can support them.
All right, well, let's talk about that very question. When are teens at risk for drinking? When are they most at risk for drinking or underage drinking?
Yeah, so, the times they're most at risk is when there's any kind of big changes. So sometimes this is stressors, like if there's separations in the family, if you guys have moved, if there's, peer stressors like breakups or loss of friendships. But sometimes it's also just normal changes for their age, right? Like moving up to middle school, moving up to high school. That's when friend groups tend to shift around more. We're exposed to more new peers. That's also when, they're more likely to encounter parties or other peers who might be drinking. So kind of keeping an eye out for how they're doing with any kind of big changes or stressors is important.
And I imagine the recent pandemic would contribute to that greatly. Obviously, not being able to see their friends as much, having to go to school over Zoom, and now with the pandemic, the restrictions being lessened, now they've been kind of let back into society, and that creates all kinds of problems too, because some kids are now going to be stressed out because they haven't dealt one-on-one and in person with their friends in a long time.
Yeah, so you're definitely seeing more anxiety or things that have kind of been worsening over the pandemic, like we're not used to going back to school or things like that. You're definitely seeing an increase in some stress, even though, things are getting better, because we're having to confront things that we haven't for a while.
But again, as I mentioned before we brought you in, now the kids have a little more freedom and now they're out and away from their parents' view. It's light later, they're outside, it's warm, a better chance that maybe they'll get themselves into some trouble they might not otherwise get into.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to make sure that you're staying involved in your kid's life, right? You want to know who their friends are, who they're spending time with, if there's changes in their friend groups. Also things like what's stressing them out, what the drama is in their friend group, all that kind of stuff, can kind of help you stay cued in. So, if there are changes or they are doing more risky behavior or getting involved with, a crowd that might not be so great for them. So that's really, one of the best ways to kind of keep tabs and make sure is just staying involved in your kid's life.
So how do we support teens in choosing not to drink and keeping them away from drinking during this crucial period of time in their lives?
Yeah, so, you want to check in with them regularly, right? You also want to make sure that you're asking kids, like when you're checking in, about positive things too, like what's going well, what are they interested in? Because if you are only having conversations with your kid when it comes to things like drinking or when they're in trouble, they are not going to open up to you, right? Because they learn to associate that, oh, mom wants to talk to me, that means something bad, and they kind of withdraw. You also want to make sure that you're modeling good habits in your home. So, you don't want to get drunk around your kid. You don't want to have big parties where there's lots of drinking at home when your kid is home. But this also means, there's a myth that if we let our kids drink at home with us, we can watch them and it's safer and it's better. But what research tells us is that's actually not true. And it actually makes kids more likely to drink or drink more often. And by doing that, you're also teaching them like, well, these rules don't apply to you, which isn't true because they can still get in trouble for drinking in your home. And you can actually get in a lot of trouble too, especially if there's other teens from other families drinking at home.
What are some of the red flags that parents should look for? Again, communicating with their child and communicating with their teen is very important, but a lot of this is the unspoken word and seeing changes in their behavior. What sort of things should the parent be looking for?
Yeah, so a big thing is if they're becoming more secretive, they don't want to tell you exactly where they're going or who they're spending time with. You find out they're lying about what they're doing. You start to notice they're spending time with different peers or an older crowd or one who maybe has a reputation for drinking more. Also, if you notice any behavior changes, so things like stealing or if money's going missing, they're starting to skip school, their grades are dropping, they're breaking curfew or other rules they wouldn't normally. All of these things are, red flags that they might have a drinking problem or they might be drinking. But it's also important to remember that these are also red flags for a lot of things with adolescents. So unless we're really being curious and kind of staying involved, we're not going to necessarily know if it's drinking or something else.
Right, that's important because, again, those are red flags to a lot of things, and as someone grows from their early teens to their later teens, there are lots of changes biologically, chemically, emotionally. So you may see some of these changes, and they may not be related to any of the things we're talking about today, but it's important for parents just to stay tuned into their child's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
What should someone do if they begin to see these changes? How should they treat this? How should they react and make sure they don't push their child farther away from them and handle this correctly?
Yeah, so the first thing is you really want to try to stay calm, right? Like if you think your kid is drinking, you may have all the feelings. You may be angry, you may be worried, but you don't want to bring all of those feelings to your kid because they're not going to respond very well. They're probably just going to shut down. So the first thing, is staying calm yourself and then taking a second to think, like, when did this behavior start? Are there other things going on or other changes that maybe I didn't think were that big of a deal before, but maybe they're related? How are their grades? Check, see if they have missing assignments or there's been other problems in school. So before you even talk to your kid, you want to kind of do a little bit of investigating and kind of think about the bigger picture and what's been going on with your child. And then you want to have a conversation, right? Now I say a conversation because you don't want to grill your kid. If you come at them with accusations like, I know you're drinking and you did this, they're going to shut down and nothing's going to go anywhere. So, you want to state the facts, like, I found this in your room, or I know you came home late from curfew last night and thought you snuck in after we were asleep, right? And then ask them what's going on. It also isn't helpful to ask a lot of why questions, like, why did you do it? Because a lot of times teenagers don't know. It's more helpful to, again, kind of collaborate with them, be an investigator, ask things like, when did this happen? What was going on? Who were you with? To try to figure out more details, and then you guys can kind of piece the why together. But again, the point is to be having a conversation with your child so that you can help them solve the problems together. You don't want to kind of just come at grilling and accusing, because that's not going to work out very well.
Well, and I imagine that's not the easiest thing to do, because as a parent, one of your jobs is to keep your child safe and often to instill discipline on them or punishment on them. So there's a very fine line there between trying to get the best result, but also staying the authority figure. That's got to be very difficult for some folks.
Yeah, and when I say this doesn't mean that like any kind of consequences go out the window, right? So we still give consequences if the behavior isn't appropriate, but you want to make sure that you've thought about those ahead of time. Because if we give some off-the-cuff consequence, like you're grounded for 6 months, that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable for you as a parent. That's not sustainable for your kid. So we want to make sure the consequences that we're giving are appropriate. We also want to make sure that we're explaining those to the kids too, right? That doesn't mean they get to question or change them. But things like, you have a curfew at 10 p.m. because you have to get up for school in the morning, and I want to make sure you're well rested, is a lot more helpful than saying, well, it's because I'm mom. It's because I say so. Because we want to keep in mind that with our consequences and with our rules, we're trying to teach them how to be successful adults, right? And because I said so isn't going to do much to help them make good choices once they're 18 and once they're living on their own.
At what point should someone seek outside help with this? Obviously, this is a program that's about education, but there are many programs and many vehicles for folks to try to take advantage of in this sort of situation if it becomes more than they believe they can address.
Yeah, so, some experimentation is normal. But if you have caught your teen drinking once and it's happening again, then, you might want to seek help. If you notice they're drinking alone or they're drinking by themselves, that's a really big red flag, because we know most like normal teen experimentation happens with peers. Also, again, if there's anything else going on. So anytime it's like drinking plus something else. So there's behavioral issues at school or at home. Your kid has anxiety or depression or has had it in the past. There's been a lot of changes at home, like you guys have moved, there's a divorce. Anytime there's another stressor going on and you're noticing the drinking, that's really a time when you want to get some extra help.
And we've sort of covered this in the interview so far, but how do our parents and how do we as parents have better conversations with our kids? I mean, I know we've sort of touched on this, but more of a direct question. How do we have these better conversations? Yeah,
so again, a big thing is checking in often. Even if you're not super interested in what your kids' interests are, you still want to talk to them. Like, let them teach you about video games or what they're into, because that helps build the foundation to talk about the more serious stuff. Right? You also want to be careful that you're not minimizing their problems. Like, yes, we are adults. We've been through it. We're older, wiser. We know more. We don't have that impulsive teenage brain anymore. But they're not there. So if you're constantly dismissing your teen's problems, like they fail a test, you're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Like, that fight with your friends isn't that bad in the long run. Or you're dismissing things as like teenage hormones, they're going to learn pretty quickly that I can't come talk to my parent because they don't understand me. When I ask teens, why don't you talk to your parent about this problem? The things I hear most often are, my parent's too busy. They don't have time for me. or they don't understand me, right? So the way we show them that we understand is we empathize with their feelings. Like, yeah, that was a really hard test. I know, I see that you feel really sad that you didn't do better. Or yeah, you're really angry at your friend because whatever the situation was, right? Even if it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, letting them know that you hear them and you understand is really important.
All right, well, Dr. Turner, I want to thank you very much for being with us. The information that you've passed along here today has been very helpful, and we wish you good luck going forward with all of your endeavors.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks very much for being with us. So the information that we received during that portion of this interview, very helpful, but obviously for folks that want more information, that need more resources, that want to look into this some more, obviously the educational part of this program, that's what our job is to get that information out. What kind of information is there and how would folks go about getting it?
Yeah, so these resources were collected by Dr. Turner, and they are ones that have accurate information. So it's not like when you Google and you can find anything on there. This is very good information that'll be good for families and teens. So there's resources directly for teens who are interested, and then there's a lot of resources for parents who are worried about their children.
All right, and we have a page on our website that folks can go to also, correct?
Yeah, yep. So you can learn more about Go for Zero at gardencitymi.org/Go for Zero.
And spell out zero, Z-E-R-O.
Yes, yep. Yeah, you could contact us through there, or you can give me a call at 734-793-1849 if you needed more resources or were interested in attending one of our upcoming programs. So.
And also the phone number for the Western Wayne Family Health Center in the event that folks want to reach out to them.
Yeah, so this is a great resource if you or someone who is being negatively affected by alcohol use, or someone in your family is. And so you can reach out to Western Wayne at 313-561-5100.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us and bringing this information forward. And I wish you the best of luck with this program going forward.
Thank you so much.
All right. That's Omni Edition Garden City for today. Thanks very much for watching. Good night, everybody.